Don't let the government be your daddy. You are self-governed.
Yes, sir!
Access granted.
Hey, what's up? It's Rick Dees in the morning. Right now, Vendog.
Going live from a 35,000-foot view to Captain America for Jesus himself. Vendog Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Monday. Oh my goodness, can you believe we're already here on Monday? We are finishing up the halfway point of September, and that's good. September to remember. Thank you very much. If you are on YouTube, please do like, share, subscribe. Yes. If you are on the infamous Rumble, please hit it up on Rumble at Vendog Radio USA. If you are on Getter, Gettr, please hit the follow switch, repost, and thank Jason Miller, the entire Getter front office crew, for always blessing us and putting us on the front page on Getter, because it always does get better with Getter. If you are an X, formerly known as Twitter, please hit the follow switch, repost, and share, and it will immediately be relayed on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever you shall download, broadcast, and podcast. And yes, we are doing it big today. My man Daniel Mercuri will be in the house. He's running for the state gubernatorialship of California before it just runs out of real estate the way things are going with Governor Gavin Newsom in office. So, as you all know, that there's been a lot of talk about Charlie Kirk over the weekend, and yes, we do around here regret the things that have happened to Mr. Kirk. And it's so sad for him and his family. It's sad for his family. His children don't have a father to go home to, and his wife doesn't have a husband that's coming back home. Pray for Erica and her children. Lots of people that disagree with him still are saying heinous things about him. But sometimes you need to put yourself aside and, stop being so callous. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, and if you feel led on your heart by the Lord to support the broadcast and podcast, thank you so much for doing that. My moderators put it in the live chat and also in the show notes, because this broadcast does function by the audience only, but we are going to run ads on the show, not YouTube. It's just going to run on the show by itself periodically, and people are going to be able to buy ad space on the broadcast so that we can continue to run the ship around here. So this young lady from North Carolina in Charlotte, as you guys know, she was brutally stabbed to death on a train. And do you know that people like Stephen Furtick did not promote this, right? It's sad. So look, I want you guys to look at the footage of all of this.
New footage reveals that in the final moments of her life, Irina Sarutska's fellow passengers tried to help her.
This is terrible. Wow. That is terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in my brother, Daniel Mercuri. Daniel, bro.
Hey, how you doing, Big Dog? Can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we're good, bro.
Well, that was terrible. I mean, there's no words for that, and there's no words for the atrocities that are going on. Mm-hmm. It's escalating daily. It's escalating, everywhere I go, within the party. I mean, it's so absolutely evil. Just like the Bible has talked about in the end times, that the hearts of men will grow cold. And there's such a fear factor going on that nobody steps up to the plate and, bothers to do anything about it. I get it. Everyone's in fear for their own lives, but this is why evil is able to do what they're doing. This is why, such depravity is able to come out onto the scene and engage in just such evil behavior, and we allow for it. I rarely see anybody now step up to the plate and defend somebody. And I get it too. Sometimes when people say, if you defend somebody, sometimes you might end up going to prison for that. Doing the right thing, unfortunately, might land you in hot water, but that's no excuse. We all need to start doing the right thing. We all need to start engaging in unifying with each other, protecting one another, standing up, speaking up, voicing out, all these different things that
Oh no. Did Daniel just freeze on us? Yeah, he did. Daniel froze on us, guys. Daniel, you there? Okay. Try logging back in. Ladies and gentlemen, that's crazy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that he can log in properly. And until he logs back in, I want to share this with you all. This was courtesy of, I think, Pastor Tim Thompson. He wanted to share this, and he said, "Can you please make this go viral? Because this is in the area, Van." I said, "Sure, I sure can." We're gonna get Daniel Mercuri back on in a second, guys, but I want you to find out who this lady is. This is dangerous, and these people are in the school system teaching.
Well, hey everybody, Pastor Tim here, and there's this teacher I want you to be aware of, Jacqueline Gardner from the San Jacinto Unified School District in Southern California. Just the day after Charlie Kirk passes away, she posts this. Take a look at this post. I'm not going to read it because I don't want to be saying what she said, but I'll put it up for you to read for yourself. But our tax dollars are funding for people like this to oversee our children. This is reprehensible. There needs to be a massive disciplinary action taken against this teacher. In my opinion, she should be fired. We don't want people like this taking our money, making a living by us, so that way she can have this type of influence over our children. This is, again, reprehensible. I'm going to put in the comment section, I'm going to put the contact information for the San Jacinto School District. Share this video out with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Make this video go viral, and let's make some noise on this. This has been a tragedy for our nation, and she puts posts up like this and various others, but this one is reprehensible. We need to make some noise on this.
All right, Daniel.
Yes.
Okay. All right, there you go.
I don't know what that was. Am I breaking up my audio or my visual?
Yeah, your audio and visual were breaking up for a second there. So
How am I now?
Yeah, it is crazy, man. The oligarchs, brother, the oligarchs. So you were going to tell me this whole thing before we get into all the topics that we wanted to talk about today, about the whole thing that happened with the GOP, which we know is totally upside down and bent out of shape anyways.
Yeah, that's man, that is an understatement. And please let me know if my microphone is going in and out. I might just have to go straight to, the little camera here and just use that audio and just and leave it at that. Yeah, it was not what I had expected. There was a lot of visceral going on. There were a number of candidates, Chad Bianco, Steve Hilton, David Serpa, Leo Zaki, and a couple of other ones that dropped in, Leona Harno, Kobe Markham, and a few others. But it was interesting to see how party members were treating all of the candidates, including Steve. Chad Bianco got a few attacks. Steve Hilton got shunned a few times. I got a little bit of a media blackout here and there. People coming up to us, and saying just kind of all kinds of, just rhetoric. And, one of the biggest things that came to my attention was I was asked, how would you feel if you split the vote and there ends up being 2 Democrats that are in the jungle primary? And for me, that's just one of the most rhetoric statements that are always made to the candidates. And it made me think, and I posted this up, and I don't know if you read it, but one of the things I did was research, and I said, what has the California GOP or the CRA ever done in the state that was so successful that we've overtaken and flipped the House, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest things that I realized was the GOP has never flipped the Senate for 70 years.
Wow.
And the Assembly has never been flipped in 55 plus years.
Yikes.
And we have only 2 Republican governors since Ronald Reagan. What does that tell you?
Corruption.
Corruption. They've done nothing to achieve anything. They have achieved zero. And yet they want to tell the candidates that we should adhere to their plan, that we're the ones who are, splitting the vote. I'm sorry, but your strategy and your plans have achieved zero. So until the party can prove to the candidates that you are no longer a pay for play, that you have tried and true measures to get in candidates because of your success rate, it is the candidates providing an opportunity for every voter, including the party, to do something different. But don't ever come up to the candidates and tell the candidates that we're responsible for your ineptitude, your inadequacies. You've done nothing since even before I was born, and I'm 50 years old. So what does that tell everybody in the state? Stop listening to the party. Stop trusting their failed methods. They have become the party that is paid to lose. Plain as day.
Yeah, my good buddy Charlie, Charlie Simons.
Yes.
He said, "Hey, are you going to go to the GOP California convention?" I'm like, "Oh, you mean the gutless opportunist party convention?" No, I won't waste my time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And
So
that's crazy. So they're telling all of the candidates, either you're in lockstep with us or we don't push you.
pretty much. And what was crazy is when they were voting on resolutions, those resolutions that aligned with President Trump's policy, most of them, if not more than half, voted against and voted down those resolutions. What in the party am I looking at? Why am I even bothering with these groups? So really, that's become a huge question mark for my campaign. Do I want to continue to waste time with a group that's not really going to vote outside of their party lines? They're going to follow along like automatons because of their ideology that, well, we need to vote for the same person. We just got to get in alignment, irrelevant if that candidate is right for the state. Their main priority that echoed the halls of this really sad convention was money. It was all about raising funds. Who can generate more funds? That's all I kept hearing was generating funds. What was my projected amount? Like, had nothing to do with the fact that they themselves have been a failed party for decades. Nobody wanted to address that. And then on top of the fact that they didn't even follow their own bylaws, they had delegates running for associate delegate positions. Well, that goes against their bylaws. Why was that permitted? They pick and choose when they're going to enforce their bylaws, so long as it fits their current narrative. And if it doesn't, they shift around and move the goalpost. Sounds a lot like the left. So for me, it really boiled down to, why am I even bothering with this group? Why am I even standing up here and saying, yeah, I'm a registered Republican, but I'm America first, right? I'm California first. I am for freedom, the Constitution. I stand on the principles of God. When we sit here and we listen to this party, that's not part of their protocols. In fact, most of them have never even read the California state constitution, let alone know the Constitution. And those that do are seriously, they are in the minority, brutally in the minority.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? If you read Daniel's book, and I urge you guys to go out and buy it if you are able to, it's called Lucifer Zenith. And it gives you a big clue that a lot of these people are basically two wings of the same bird, Republicrats. Let's just say it how it is.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm glad you wrote this book, bro, because this book is a lot of truth in it. It's got principalities in it.
Yes. There's elements to that book that things are transpiring right now. I've gotten more phone calls from people who have read it, 6 months ago. And even a few neighbors of mine who I gave free copies to, they're followers or supporters of mine. And they said, I, as of late, with a lot of the things that have been going on, I went back and I read your book and I realized, wow, some of these things that you wrote about, not that I was prophesying, but the way I laid it out and how some things associate to some of the four horsemen you can actually see, because they're tied to areas of industry that we talk about all the time, but we don't realize that in some respect, that's kind of how the horses work, and a lot of the things that we're enduring right now. So a lot of people have gone back and have read the book, and they're asking themselves, wait a second, I need to go back and study this in some part and highlight and take notes. And then I've got phone calls. Can I better break down, some of these things I previously spoke about? So I encourage everyone, please read it. It's not that expensive. It's $21 on Amazon. But I do also take care of a lot of people who say, I can't afford it. I get it, right? Every little penny is going towards everything just to put food on the plate, gas in your vehicle, take care of your kids. So I have given out now to date, since last we talked, over 1,000 free copies. So I've either given out at my events, I'll have given out anywhere from 30 to 60 copies, free copies signed, and or I'll mail it to you, which is out of my own pocket. I mean, again, it's not about, has nothing to do with the money, has everything to do with waking you up, empowering you, and getting you educated and caught up so that you don't have to do what I did, which was, I went through 6 years of trying to, reveal and expose and explain, how all the corruption works and where corrupt government hides and operates, so that we know how to function and fight against that.
And I'm gathering a lot from all of this right now. It's like the Democrat Party in California doesn't even need to do anything. They have the GOP to do their bidding for them, to pit the candidates against one another, instead of saying, hey, you know what? Asking the candidates, what are you going to do for the people? Each candidate, right? So it's absolutely heinous, all of the stuff that I'm seeing, but I am not surprised at all of this. I mean, Travis Allen could have been the head of the California GOP, but they stiffed him because he wasn't a toe the line kind of guy.
No, and that was the other key element to what I'd seen too. It was a lot of these groups within the GOP were pushing their own agenda that were really outside of conservatism. It was really outside of, what makes up the foundation, or the, the documents that have really our forefathers laid out before us to ensure that, we would have a government that adheres to the will of the people. And there were so many ideologies. It was like they were picking and choosing candidates that they felt would push their own personal agenda, not necessarily the agenda of what the state needs, but what they wanted, right? Specific to their agendas and what they wanted to happen, because they're in ties with certain corporations. I noticed that some of these groups are tied to particular lobbyists. Some of these lobbyists that I discovered too are also associated to the Muslim Brotherhood. I was getting a lot of threats before I even went to the convention that were threatening me if I would to even run, that I would be pounded into the ground or into the sand, and they would, render my surrender or whatever. I mean, it was just nonsense stuff. I ended up having to bring my own personal security, because I take the threats very seriously. Yeah, I can take care of myself, but at the same time, there's a lot of other, people on my team that just by, association, they could be injured. So these are things that we need to think about. Unfortunately, this is the time that we're living in, and these groups really are not California first. They are not America first. They're okay with undermining the Constitution. It was so blatantly obvious, so much so, and this was the sad part, was that they were giving away tickets for people to go to the ball because nobody wanted to go. It was the lowest attendance that the California GOP had ever endured. In fact, they lost more money than they gained anything. So it was a very discombobulated, convention. And due to that fact, I mean, it showed why. It really did. You could see why. There was so much splintered. They're so splintered, and there was so much in-house fighting. You're exactly right. The Democrats don't have to do anything. We're doing it all on our own.
Because I feel like this. One of my friends said it best that I used to work with in broadcasting. He said his dad always taught him, because his dad owned an engineering company. He goes, his dad always told him, hey, whatever your talent is, if you're going to mentor somebody and push them up, make sure they're better than you.
Yeah.
When you bring them in, make sure they're better than you so you can push them over the top.
Yes.
Because it's ridiculous, man, because people don't realize there is no such thing as I in team.
No,
there's no such thing.
No, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because that's even something that I always tell my son. I said, son, because he's asked me, Dad, why do you push me so hard? And I said, because I want you to be a better version than your old man. Raise the bar on yourself. I had to raise the bar. I came from two alcoholic parents, and as much as I love them and I have forgiven them, for all the things that me and my siblings, grew up had to go through. I get it. I understand. Sometimes hard times comes into people's lives, and they start falling prey to, addictions of various types. But it took a lot for me to break that mold. To not be an alcoholic, to find other outlets, to ensure that I'm right with God, to ensure that Jesus is at the center of my world and at the foundation of all that I do and everything that I say and anything that I become a part of. I want my children to be a better version. And I look at myself and say, I am a better version than my own parents. And that's not tooting my own horn. It's to ensure that I didn't repeat, that vicious cycle that they had created. And so I want my son to be that way. And that's how it should be with businesses. This is how it should be with, our communities, raising the bar for excellence and exceptionalism.
Absolutely. And especially if you see a man or woman trying to do the right thing, wouldn't you want to raise those people up? You know what I mean? I'm like, it's common sense.
It absolutely is. And unfortunately, this is what we're enduring right now. This is why, we see all the atrocities that are going on. We see all the evil that is transpiring, and there really is there's no excuse for it. And really, the biggest thing that I hear people say, and I'm okay with it. When it unfortunately came to Charlie Kirk, a lot of people are shouting, we're all Charlie Kirk. I can appreciate that, but what are you going to do? Are you going to go out there and start going to university? Because if you are, then that is honoring Charlie. Are you going to create your own debate group that's going to go there and do exactly with what he did and go, state to state, county to county, city to city, right? He even went to other countries and he exposed his viewpoint. He was okay with being wrong, or he was okay with learning. There was many elements at times where he learned something new and then he expanded on once he was challenged, right? That's the beauty of discourse, is we're not always going to be right, and to showcase our information and to not be afraid to voice it, because that is the core element to the First Amendment, without repercussion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And people are like, but you didn't agree with a lot of what he said. I said, yeah, but I agreed with some things that he said because they made sense. And I said, come on, man. And they're like, you're not going to torture him? I'm like, no, I'm not going to torture him. Are you kidding me? I'm like, that goes against scripture. Jesus says, if you commit murder in your heart, you already committed murder physically, basically.
Yes. And a lot of people say, yeah, but you must agree with everything with Trump. I don't agree with everything with the president. I don't agree with a lot of the people that I've voted into office. We're not perfect. Our whole point is to better ourselves, to engage in discourse with those who we appoint to, represent us, and to hold ourselves and them accountable. We have to constantly be in engagement. You can't just simply put somebody in office and walk away and think like, okay, now you can get back to your decadence. It doesn't work like that. You really need to participate, and you need to participate on a regular basis. And that requires you to constantly be up on the bills, to participate when legislation is passed or rulings or anything that's being executed that is, against the Constitution, our rights, or rights being turned into privileges. We need to participate. And when we see these clandestine groups that are growing, that are, variations and splinters of, say, Antifa, and this growing hate and indoctrination, we need to participate to ensure that we stop that, because that's going to be the destruction, as we're already witnessing, to our nation.
Yeah. And I had a good friend that I was talking to the other day, and he's all over, the Sean Hannity bandwagon. I'm like, dude, Sean Hannity's a hack. Let's just say how it is. I said, come on, man. He's like, oh, no, he's not. No, he's not. He's a conservative. I'm like, dude, he's a joker.
Yes.
I said, come on. And he goes, how would you know? I'm like, dude, I worked in the same business he came out of. I said, I even told his producers I would never board out for him because he's no Rush Limbaugh. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't, Rush Limbaugh didn't have to lie to get to where he was at.
No. And that's the sad thing, everybody's willing to trample on each other, step on each other to get to that position in life that they think, is going to be, a really great one. But instead, what they're really doing is they're just, hurting everybody along the journey. They're no better than what we're experiencing right now. And this is the sad thing, right?
Mhm.
We're looking for, and that's the other thing too. I think you and I have talked about it. We constantly say we're looking for leaders, but you're the leader, right?
Yep.
This is the first contract with the United States with government is we the people was the first contract. That
Mhm.
first contract gives our government body authority. How so? Through the consent of the governed, right? They only
Mhm.
have one job, and that is to secure our rights. But we keep wondering why, when we keep asking for leaders, it reminds me of the story of the Bible where, the Jews were asking for a king, and God was like, no, you don't want a king. I'm
Mhm.
here. Here I am. And they felt like, well, everybody else had one. Well, we want one too. And he kept reminding them, you do not want that. Right. And so I'm trying to remind everybody, you do not want to seek leaders. You are the leader, but that also forces people to have to be responsible for the things that are going on. They don't want to be responsible if
Mhm.
something goes haywire in their community. That's not something that they want to be a part of, or realize that it's easier to turn a blind eye, just like we see in these videos with that unfortunate young woman. I mean, it was just it was so sad. It was heartbreaking. It broke my heart because I have two beautiful daughters, and
Yeah.
my daughters are just there's a pride and proudness and joy that you have when you have a son, but there's just something about a daughter that just sort of opens up and softens the different side of your heart that you didn't think you had, that your own little girl can do. The beauty of a young girl who will eventually become a woman, who will eventually become a wife and a mother.
Mhm.
There's just something there that I don't know. You can't put it into words. It's just that untangible, tangible something. And when I see somebody like this young girl who was just shocked by what had happened and then slowly fell over to her death, I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at right now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the drive-by media has taken a different spin on it. Now, Daniel, you and I are Gen Xers.
Yes.
We grew up in a generation of young men where if we see a girl being under attack, or anybody, period, that's defenseless, we jump in and take that person down that's attacking them.
Yes, I remember, even though, again, I could go back to my father, even though he had his demons, he always stood for ensuring though that men were men and that you protect women. And we were happy, I think we were raised in a generation where we all wanted to be heroes. We wanted to be saviors. We wanted to be, we wanted to be that Superman of our town. We wanted to be that person. We wanted to raise the bar. We pushed ourselves to
And we work together.
yeah, that exactly. I can't, not to digress, but I mean, I can go back to thinking about, I remember, being on the football team, and after being out there for 2 hours of training, we would always have this, we call it, I think it was Hell Mountain. And it was roughly 30 yards of like a, 45-degree incline of dirt hill. And it would be at the edge of the field. And we'd make our way down there, and we would just run up and down as fast as we could, sprinting for another 30 minutes, to the point where half of us were keeling over and vomiting. As soon as we spit it out, we went right back to the mountain until coach said stop. Now I get it, that was harsh and that was hard, but that was also the differences as to why I was on a winning team versus a losing team.
Yep.
And why, even for me to this day, if I'm at my age, I push myself to continue to push to excellence. I was asked to take one of the police physical exams, and they wanted to see. It was locally. It was about a year ago, and it was just for fun. It was just to kind of see the differences between an older generation such as Gen X and baby boomers versus the millennials and the Gen Zs. And what's crazy was I outperformed everybody. I outran everybody. I out push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, all of the balancing, things that they wanted us to do, hop, skip, jump over certain things the way a police officer would do. And it was to show, I guess they were just doing something to kind of see what they needed to do to improve upon the testing for, young cadets that were coming in.
Right.
And if the older generation could keep up. And it was interesting to see how the older generation just demolished, the younger generation who couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
There's I lowered the bar.
Yeah, I became friends with a guy that's a police officer in Manhattan Beach, and he's 64 years old. He's in the greatest shape of his life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still grapple to this day. I've been grappling for 20 years now, and I've been at it, but I still go against the young bucks who are 25, 32, jacked, yoked, to the tank. And it's one of those things where I've learned to be smarter. I've learned to still push myself and know my limitations, which allows me to keep going, which is what, unfortunately, the younger generation doesn't always do. They don't understand, not all of them, but a good portion of them fail to understand what it means to use that mindset, to push your mind, your body, your spirit to absolute excellence. And I think that's the difficult part. It's everybody else's fault why they haven't been able to achieve it. It's everybody else's fault why we are at where we're at. It's their neighbor's fault. It's the color of somebody else's skin. It's the fact that somebody else has a higher education. It's victimhood that is spreading like wildfire through our country. Right? It's everybody else's fault but your own. And so there's no accountability. There's no self-accountability. And we wonder why we have the certain representation that we have in government is because, again, they proliferate that ideology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, well, everybody else has to be on the same level as you. It's like, that's not necessarily true. Everybody has a different form of success, and it's not always going to be financial success like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Absolutely. And one of the other things too, you mentioned a second ago too, that the candidates are always at odds with each other. That is true in part. But there's actually going to be a meeting right now that so far has been an agreement. And, we're not really publicizing it, but I'm happy to let your audience know, is that Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, David Serpa, Ryan Tillman, myself.
Ryan Tillman's a really nice guy too.
He's an amazing guy. I mean, he and I even, we prayed over each other. We prayed for each other. We were at, a couple events with each other, and we hit it off really, really well. Mm-hmm. Candidates don't always hate each other. Yeah, we have disagreements. There's candidates I'm not a fan of. I'm never going to be a fan of. Mm-hmm. But we're at a break point. We're at a precipice. What are we going to do? What are we going to do differently than what the party has failed to do? Right?
It's like you guys got to band together and help gather the people to save California.
Yes, and so we've made an agreement to meet. Now, we did ask Leo Zach. He declined. We left the door open for him just because I think at first he just felt like, we're all going to ask people to step down. That wasn't the case. Nobody said we were going to ask you to stop running for governor. Mm-hmm. Everybody said we need to do something different. And I don't know what that looks like. And then we also called on Jay on. So we're waiting for his response. Hopefully he'll respond today. But all of us had agreed that we are going to meet as executors at a private meeting in an undisclosed location. And the reason why we're doing this is because we don't want any performative, actions going on. We don't want the press to be there. We don't want any podcasters and influencers to be in the room.
Right.
There's not going to be any wives. There's no campaign managers. It is just us. There's no recording. It's just, we need to sit down. Why? Well, because we can pull votes from away from each other. Let's just face that. Right. So while we're at odds with each other, do we really think we're going to win? And if we are going to pull votes away, we can do a lot of damage to each other. None of us are going to be there. None of us are going to take the state back. What can we do differently? And it was kind of shocking to some people who were like, well, that's never going to happen. Well, they all agreed. So we all know, this is an open discussion. What that looks like, I have no idea. And, I'm praying about it. And maybe your audience can pray about it and realize, listen, I'm not going to sit here and give up what I'm doing. I just realized there's something different has to change. And if we don't, all of us, even in our community, step up and do something that we've never done before, we're going to continue to go down this rabbit hole of darkness. And we're going to continue to see, splintered groups that have, lost themselves. They're getting wrapped up into their emotions where, they just want to emotionally react. And we're going to end up engaging in some sort of civil war, which is the last thing I want to see. If you've never been to war, and let me tell everybody right now, you don't want to be in war. You don't want to be in a war zone. You don't want to be in some sort of theater. You don't want bombs going off on your soil. You do not know what that's like. Don't get me wrong. Some people live in, near the, hard streets where there's just, crime is running rampant. And you understand, constant, gunfire and vandalism and violence. But let me tell you, when it's war, that changes everything. And this is why we're at this stage where we need to do something different. And the candidates right now, at least on the Republican side, are willing to do something different. We don't know what that is, but we're willing to try something or discuss something.
Right. Because they, to be honest with you, the GOP doesn't mind if you guys destroy each other.
No,
that's what they want, actually.
That's exactly what they want. And this is why we even said this is outside the party. The party's not doing this. The party didn't recommend this. The party does not want us to unify. The party does not want us coming up with a plan of action that might actually show uniformity, some sort of agreement, some sort of plan, something that just we just haven't done here in the state of California, something that we're going to do that's coalescing, that shows, you know, some sort of strength that we've been needing for a really long time. They want us to be separated. They want us to constantly attacking each other. Listen, we all have our differences, and most of you already know my differences with other candidates that I just don't think should be in the race. But there's a popularity, there's a growth, you know, and a lot of people have now considered me to be, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but to be, you know, the dark horse of this race, right? Because I've been at it for so long. There are a lot of groups that don't understand why so many groups are supporting me, and it's because I've been to over 240 cities. I have spoken at length to many of these small groups, big groups. I've spoken anywhere from 5 people to, you know, a crowd of 500. You know, I will be on an X Live with 3 people to, you know, 150 people, or I'll sit on a Zoom and people will cycle in for 2, 3, 4 hours. I'll sit there because they just want to talk to me. They want to know my viewpoints, and I will do this. I will sit exactly where I'm at right now, and I will wait for other people to get off work, to come in, to call in, and to ask their questions. And then they'll stay there for, you know, 10, 20 minutes, and then they'll leave. And this is anywhere from people that are up in Modoc, which is like as far north as you can go, you know, Siskiyou and stuff like that's as far as you can go in California, all the way down to San Diego. Right. Like this is how far I have a reach. And I have groups from different chairs calling me because they're tired of the party as well. And they just want to know me personally. They want to talk to me personally. They want to weigh out the pros and the cons. How did I get that far? It's because I've been at it for 6 years. I didn't do it off of, well, you need millions of dollars. No, I just needed to have the willingness, and I needed the fortitude and the gumption to press. And I had to be smart about it. And people are like, well, how are you getting around? You know, how are you going to get around? How are you going to compete with, you know, the Steves and the Chads and anybody else like that has these $1 million budgets? I'm going to do it intelligently, creatively, and with, you know, with the will and grace of God guiding me. And this is how I'm able to be this dark horse in the race.
Absolutely. I'm going to say this honestly. If you guys have a very productive meeting together, it's going to be the GOP's biggest mistake they've ever made, because that can create a monster.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And we do know that. You know, it was, even some of us have kind of doubled up on calling back Leo Zaki and said, Leo, listen, again, don't say no, man. Just come to the table and let's just talk. No one's asking you to not run. That's not the point of this. There's something different here, and we need to make it happen. Be a part of that, right? We had Cheon, and Cheon's campaign manager is somewhat in the way. It has not, you know, some of these, you know, campaign assistant managers or volunteers, you know, they want to be in the room because they want to act like a proxy. It's like, no, you're not going to sit in a room.
No.
You know, these individuals, one, the egos are going to be massive in that room. You're not going to keep up with them. And number two, listen, most of us, you know, have been able to, you know, weather storms of people hating us and, you know, acting, you know, in such an aggressive manner. And we have to be able to fire back, and we have to be creative on how we're going to do it. Either way, whether you like their answers or not, you're going to be in a room that you're going to be a proxy. You can't speak to that capacity of your candidate. So get out of the way, tell your candidate, and encourage them to show up. Right. But we get these people who blockade, you know, their candidate that they're supporting or they're campaigning for, or, you know, they're a manager for, whatever. It just shows you, you know, the ignorance that we all sort of face. And this is kind of where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to sit here. Like, I'm glad you're bringing me on, Vendog, so that we can just sort of like have this sort of very candid conversation, this sort of frustration that is going on. And a lot of the candidates are feeling it. In fact, after, you know, Charlie, a lot of the candidates were very somber. They did take a step back, and this was right after the convention. And everybody, even the convention, it would really, you know, we all kind of took a step back and said, okay, you know, we're all kind of a target, because we're all on that stage saying stuff that other people don't like, the left doesn't like.
They don't like you or me.
Yeah, right. This isn't, you know, you know, people want to scream out, well, you know, it's hate speech, but it's not. It's just speech that they don't like. It's speech that they hate, and speech that, you know, convicts them. Right? It's the spirit of conviction, but it's the hard truths that will set you free. Right? Truths will always vindicate you, but they will also convict you. And people who feel convicted get violent, and the people who feel vindicated understand that they just heard something that they can't argue against, right? Because that's truth. Truth will always resonate. That's why our forefathers wrote
Mhm.
that. We know these truths to be self-evident. And they said among, right? Meaning there's more.
Mhm.
They knew that there was a conviction to truths being self-evident.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mhm. Mhm. So I'm gonna tell you something right now, and this is my first time making it public, but someone that's affiliated with the unadulterated GOP wanted me to do things to pit, the candidates against one another, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, I don't roll that way, man, because I knew something like this was going to happen. Like when that convention came up, like the forest for the trees were really going to come out and the true colors were shining through, man, just like you said today. And I'm like, no, I can't do that because you just never know what's going to come out of this, right? So,
Right.
because they want us to destroy each other, bro, because that way, while we're destroying each other down here, they're still getting fat pockets up there. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
It's
And
crazy.
the crazy was is that I got into some of the rooms where you can go in there and they're meeting, they're having their conventions. Each chapter has their own room that they rent or they had to pay for to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And in those meetings is where candidates kind of go from room to room, ask for about 5 minutes, and then we share spiel and then we leave. But of course, when you walk in, you hear some of the things that they're saying. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was a lot of the old sort of playbook that kept being uttered out. There were some
Mm-hmm.
twists and turns on how they were trying to get more people to come into the party and join the party and really kind of get them out there so that they could have a better outreach and get people to increase the Republicans versus the Democrats. But there was just too many NPPs and independents and other small parties created here in California that they're not reaching. They're unable to do it. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things that I heard were things like, well, maybe if we brought in more, free coffees and chocolate chip, and we were at I don't some sort of location or free place that didn't require long distance drives. Maybe we could be a little more centered for some groups that we're trying to reach out. Like I was, crumpets and cake. For me, I was just sitting there listening to some of these ideas, and what kills me is that not one of these groups ever talked about, let's bring in the candidates who lose and who win, and let's have a debrief. Let's talk to the candidates and ask them, what are you seeing going on? Because the candidates are the ones who are all over the community trying
Mm-hmm.
to stand and speak in front of as many groups as they possibly can, whether they're in backyard barbecues, in the living
Mm-hmm.
room with a few neighbors who want to know who you are, you're on a Zoom or something like that, or you're standing on a big stage, or you're at a restaurant or something talking to people who are curious about who you are and whether or not they should vote for you.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly, at the end of these events, there's always a massive amount of time that is spent on one-on-one. So when the night's over, the day's over, the event or whatever, wherever I'm going, you can ask anybody on my team that has been to any of these events. They will stand there and they'll be in front of me and they'll allow for one person at a time to come and talk to me, right? Because everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to tell you their life story. They want to tell you their struggles. They want to provide deep information on things that they found that's heavy corruption going on in our state, and they want to hopefully involve us, because if we do get in that position, they want us to do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever, since I've been running since 2019, not one of these groups have ever asked me, Daniel, what's your perspective? Daniel, what do you think about what is going on? You've been all the way up to Siskiyou, you've been all the way down to San Diego, you've been out to Central, Modesto. What's the difference is like? What is the cultural difference? Right? What are their needs versus what we think is needed? What are you hearing? This is so key. It could not only enrich the party, but it could better the party as to what their focus needs to be on and why potentially they have, a fallout with people who have just thrown their hands up and says, I don't want anything to do with the party.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are as candidates who are rich with that information in detail, but you don't want that information. They don't want to hear this kind of information,
Nope.
or they just haven't even thought about it. But this is what we keep seeing.
It's like the same old wheel that just keeps going round and round, right?
No, that's exactly true. And so again, for me, I just I want your audience to know that this is the real struggle. conservatives are immensely split. And if they are relying on the party to give them some sort of mail out as to who you should vote for, you
Good
have
luck.
fallen prey to their trap. That's what they want you to do. They don't want you to be a critical thinker. They want you to think that they know any better. And I'll tell you right now, it was, like I said, it was a big disappointment when I went to the convention. It was a huge disappointment, but I wasn't surprised.
So
It's just-
basically, they treated you guys all on the same level because you're not in their club.
No, and it was interesting is that I've been to some groups where they were filled with Democrats or NPPs, and I was treated much better than my own than members of my own party. That's sad.
Wow.
Right? Well, in fact, a lot of people don't know, and I'm happy to share it with you, with your audience. A lot of people don't know that I spoke to high school groups, Turning Point USA high school groups, high school chapters, and it was here in LA, just outside of Bakersfield. But there was this big struggle as to the chapter leader was wondering why there was this pushback not to allow Daniel Mercuri to talk about his candidacy. And they said, well, we were inviting him to speak about his book, Lucifer Zenith. And it's a political religious book, but it's how everything ties into the corruption. And they were really struggling because apparently my name made it back there to San Diego chapters and universities to not bring on Daniel. And this was last year in 2024. And some members who eventually met up with me this year were like, oh, you're Daniel. Like, I've been hearing so much about you. And now I finally met you. And man, I'm going to support you. How can I help your team? And they would tell me, yeah, your name made it to these chapters down there, that you are a white supremacist.
That's funny because your mentality, if they read your book, is our blood is the same.
Right? So I was like, me? I'm a white supremacist? I go, well, I guess. I mean, I must be doing the right thing. If you're not hated or if you're not lied about or people aren't making things up about you, you're just not doing your job, right? You're not doing it the right way. And I said, I don't even have involvements really with Turning Point. It was just a chapter person who created a new chapter outside of Bakersfield was, creating a high school group, and they were invited in and they've got a little following on YouTube and stuff. And so they heard about me through members of their church. And so when I was brought in, there was this pushback because they asked me, they go, Daniel, why are they doing like heavy research on you? I don't understand. Like, I heard you speak. I talked to you personally. What am I missing? And I said, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. What am I missing? And I didn't even know about San Diego until somebody from San Diego who finally heard about me, seen me, was mentioned to me by other groups and patriot groups. They're like, oh, you got to check out Daniel. He goes, like, this guy's name keeps coming up. So when they were like, I don't see a white supremacist here. This guy's not only, half Latino and half Sicilian. He's constantly talking about the Constitution and state. He named the constitutionalist or the 5-star constitutional candidate out of all the candidates during the 2022 prime by Mr. Constitution himself, Douglas V. Gibbs. I didn't even know I was being tested, or he was asking me questions, and I had no clue that he was just quizzing me about my knowledge of state laws and the differences, between, court edicts and what the Constitution says. And so he rated me 5 stars. And so I became a constitutionalist, or at least titled that by way of the people. I didn't label myself that. I love candidates who go out there and they go, I'm a constitutionalist. I never said that. It was everybody else who said that just because of the way I speak. And, and I just went to a recent event up here in Monterey, and some of the members there were like, you talk like Charlie Kirk. And I said, you know what? That is one of the greatest compliments anybody could give me. That young man had such intelligence, and dare I say, he had a photographic memory, but he breathed the information. And for me to be complimented that way, thank you. I mean, it was such a flattering comment. What do I say to that? But they honored me. And so this is, for me, was a shock when somebody was like, you're a white supremacist. So, but I did find out who that came from, and it did come from a California Hispanic GOP chair member. So,
wow.
So
fake Republicans, huh?
Huh?
Fake Republicans, huh?
Right. Again, it came from Republicans. It came from my own party spouting out lies. And this is, again, that's why I tell people, I'm hated by my own party more so than the people who are on the left. Not that I support the left and their ideologies, and of course, how they have just obliterated the Constitution and the will and the right of the people, but the fact that my own party has spread, all this mischievousness and these lies. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So we wonder why we're so splintered. I mean, that's exactly why. They
Dude,
are the
I'm just
party
so
that paid to lose.
yeah, I'm just so glad that Gabby connected you and I together about a year ago, because
Yeah.
she goes,
We-
you and Daniel have a lot in common, just like I have a lot in common with both of you. I'm like, awesome, let's do this.
right. I mean, I think it does come down to when people meet me. I think it's always come down to when somebody, says, okay, I've had enough. I keep hearing about this guy. Who is it? Can we just invite him? And then when they invite me, a lot of people are grateful, or they finally see something like, now I get it. I understand. Oh, it makes sense to me why people support you. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. We got to put these people in prison, but no one's willing to do it. Everybody wants to negotiate with these swine that are in office right now and get what they're doing. Like, I don't want anybody to negotiate with them. I want them to go to jail. This is what people are screaming out. But it's crazy is that I was talking like this back during the recall during 2020.
Yep.
So, I when my congressional race was over with during the special election here, it started in 2018. At least for me in the summer, and then went all the way until March of 2020. And I knew at that time that in order for there to be real change in our state, it had to be at the seat of the governor. And I truly needed to understand vested authorities. So I really started self-educating myself into how the laws work, how all three branches, function together, what each vested authority can and cannot do, and where there's an overlap. I mean, it took me a great amount of time. And so here we are now, right? It's basically, I've been at this for 6 years. When this race is over with, it'll be 7 years in total. And this was something that I really wanted to set out to do. And it just back in 2020, I was talking about, wow, you know what? These people really need to go to prison. The more I educated myself, the more I realized they can go to jail. They can go to prison. That's the chief executor's prerogative to perform those expedient investigations to get the indictments. And there's a process there's multiple processes for this. I just didn't realize that because no one ever asked those questions. How can it? Long conversations with anything that's in a, abrogation to your, you're going outside of your vested authorities. No, there's so much that the executive branch can do that can really push back against the judicial and the legislative body, especially when they're engaging in fiduciary delinquency. You can't do it. So everybody thought it was a nutcase during the recall. Now everybody's calling me up and they're like, aren't you the guy that was talking about putting these people in prison? I said, yeah. And they're like, yeah, I remember you. I'm going to vote for you.
Hey, because they realize that a lot of those seats are really empty at the end of the day when they read Lucifer Zenith. Oh, so let me ask you this. Can you stick around after the break? Because I want to hit on those 5 topics that you and I are going to talk about today.
Yeah, I have about 20 more minutes. Are you good with that?
Okay, that's great. That's more than enough time. We'll be right back after this. I got to take a break because of the iHeartRadio affiliate. So if that's fine with you, so we can do this.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with more of Daniel Mercuri after.
Don't forget to follow us on all forms of social media at VinDog Radio Live. That's VINNDOGGRADIO. More of VinDog Radio Live after this.
Yes, sir!
Access granted.
What's happening, friends? VinDog here, letting you know that the merch store is open for business full bore right now. VinDogRadio.myspreadshop.com. That's VinDogRadio.myspreadshop.com. You can score the latest designs from t-shirts, hoodies, jackets, baseball caps, backpacks, and more. We also have mugs, Yetis, and other drinking tumblers. This store is absolutely incredible. It has over 350 items to choose from, with every style and fashion to suit everyone's needs and desires. So if you love Jesus and you are a patriot for your country, slide on over to VinDogRadio.myspreadshop.com. That's VinDogRadio.myspreadshop.com. Don't delay. Let's do this today. Hey.
Hey everybody, I have some exciting news to share with you. Here at Rock Harbor, we are going to be hosting a prophecy conference on October 4th. It's a Saturday, and it's going to be right here in Bakersfield at Rock Harbor Church. And we're going to have a prophecy conference about the apostasy of the church. But we're not only going to talk about what's going on in a negative way in the church and how the church is losing its grip with the culture and not contending for the faith. We're going to talk about ways in which we as individual Christians can re-engage in the fight and battle through what's happening not only in the West but around the world. And so we're going to have a great cast of speakers, some top-notch guys that I have lined up, and they're going to have a one-day shot of not only exposing what's going on, but equipping us in, okay, what can I do to be salt and light? How can I go about confronting this that I see in my churches, that I see in my community, that the church is not doing and the pastors are not doing? We are having a leadership deficit. And so we hope from this conference to encourage many people at the grassroots level to take ownership and say, hey, look, will you be able to take out the truth and contend for the faith, be salt and light, because the churches are not doing it anymore. The pastors are not doing it anymore. So it comes down to our responsibility. And so that's what we're geared up for. And it's going to be great. You're going to be blessed, and you're going to walk away fully equipped to be able to handle this culture. And so hopefully mark down your calendars that hopefully you can attend in person, but if not, we'll have a live stream for anyone that can't make it. And it will, either way, it'll be a blessing for you. So mark the date, October 4th. It's a Saturday here in Bakersfield, California at Rock Harbor Church. Hope to see you then.
Access granted.
Now we return you to the man who is a lover of the King of Glory, Jesus Christ. VidDog Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. And as a matter of fact, you guys, I will be at Rock Harbor Church in October 4th. I'll be broadcasting live there the entire day. So hopefully I get to meet you guys in person and see you there. It's going to be a great event. As you can tell, my man Daniel Mercuri is still with us. I am glad to have this brother here because I'm telling you guys, he is a true Christian. True with a capital TRUE. So we were talking about all of these people that need to go to jail, man. It is absolutely incriminating how California was just hijacked.
Yes. I mean, again, you always have to start off with the legislation, and it always starts off with the language that they use.
Mm-hmm.
And I've caught many of this in the past, but it's very subtle. When we go back to, I think it's AB 2223, what we know as infanticide, which is now turning our state, or turned our state into an abortion state indefinitely, because they enshrined it in the state constitution. When that bill was being drafted and written, they used and removed particular language. And one of the phrases that they used and then changed was a phrase in there that talked about a pregnant woman and crimes against nature. Well, crimes against nature is that we were talking about when a man and a woman engage in consummation, that at the moment of conception is life, right? New DNA, XXXY chromosomes. Now that life in the room, according to the laws of nature and of nature's God, written in the Declaration of Independence, means that the life in the room has rights, and it is government's job to ensure that life prevails. When you draft egregious legislation and you remove pregnant woman to say pregnant person, that now becomes ambiguous. So that little phrase right there changes the meaning that, well, it implies anybody can get pregnant, but that's not true. That's an abrogation to the laws of nature and of nature's God. So right there, that individual and individuals who not only drafted, co-drafted, and then voted in favor of it have violated their oath of office. Their job is to secure rights that are in harmony with the supreme law of the land, the Declaration of Independence, and more so the Bill of Rights. This is what their job is to do, is to expand on that. That's why our forefathers wrote that we know these truths to be self-evident, right? That all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among them is the right to life, and so on, right? So when we read that, we have to understand that legislation has to harmonize in that language. But when you change the language to change perception, then you're disrupting linguistical canons, meaning words and phrases that are accepted at the time they were first adopted to provide context, or at least the highest level of proper context, which is what our courts utilize to ensure that their rulings are also in agreement. So there's a uniformity to our laws and or the way laws are supposed to be drafted. So when our legislative body starts to go down that path and they start to change the language in order for them to pass repugnancy, well, now they've just engaged in fiduciary delinquency. You're not permitted to do that. When you do that, that is the chief executive's job to not sit there and go, well, I'm not going to pass it and the law do better. No, that is a willful act of defiance against their own constituents. It is the
Right.
chief executive's job to hold them personally accountable and to have them investigated and then removed from their seat. That's how that works. That wasn't an accidental draft. That was purposeful. So when that happens, that changes the meaning, and then there's an abrogation to our laws, and then now there's no more uniformity. And this is why they're getting away with what they're doing, because they know that the people do not know any better.
Yeah, except for guys like you and I.
Right? And we have to stay educated. We need to, as the Bible says, to show ourselves approved, right? Educate yourself and show yourself approved. This is always at the core of what I do. I want to show myself approved. I want to do the research. It's not easy. It's hard. It's time consuming. It's arduous, hours after hours, late night. But I want the answers just like you do. I'm no different. It's just I'm now standing on a platform saying the things that I've learned that a lot of people, unfortunately, it's hard to hear, right? Truths, and freedom involves the hard truths, and that's just the way it has to go.
Yeah. And that's funny. Number 5 was abortion, and you talked about that.
Yes.
So should we have a state ban on that?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, the life in the womb is innocent. The life in the womb has rights because of what our forefathers wrote and because they were genius. They were ahead of their time. So this is why, again, you always got to go back to the Declaration of Independence first and foremost. Then you have to look at the Constitution and you have to look at all the amendments. You need to understand how it all functions. This is the whole reason why the Supreme Court technically, overturned Roe v. Wade. And it wasn't just to say, well, we're going to kick it back down to the states because it's really a state problem. In part, yeah, because we are of a nation state, right? This is why every state has their own state constitution. But it was also to let them know, when you look at Alito's writing, I believe was writing for the majority at the time, but she had also stipulated that, there was no actual real right to an abortion. Why? Because it's not permissible, because it's antithetical to what is written in the Declaration of Independence, what is written and what is enshrined, the right to life, not the right to death. So again, this was a hint to the states that they really didn't have the ability or the authority to draft such egregious legislation, even enshrined into the state constitution. It's erroneous. So under my administration, it's going to be removed overnight. I don't need to negotiate with the legislative body because it's already an abrogation. And the first judge that wants to, peek their head out and try to put up an injunction, I'm personally going to make an example out of, because it's time that we push back against our judges. You have on there too, I'll briefly go over, we have a state deficit, right? Right now, again, it's between 30 and 40 billion dollars, but just a year and a half ago, I think roughly a year and a half ago, we had a $70 billion surplus. Where'd all that money go, right? Rhetorical. The state doesn't know how to budget. And a lot of people say, well, you're going to be handling millions and millions of dollars. No, it's really not that difficult. When you think about the Constitution and you think about the fact that government can only take in duties, imposts, and excises. It's very simple. Those duties and imposts and excises are in order for the state to maintain an overhead with state emergencies, the state militia, which is our National Guard and Air National Guard, and of course the employment of those who work for government body. And then some of our state agencies, commissions, and boards, which we have way too many state agency commissions and boards. They need to be cut in half under my administration, because of the fact that our state deficit those commissions and boards have caused part of the over expenditures, but it's designed to be that way on purpose so that they can launder money. And being laundered through it, well, it's we can just look at Project Room Key, try to get the homeless off the street. They've been trying to get the homeless off the street for decades. Where did all the millions of dollars go to? That's called laundering. The bullet train to nowhere. In fact, they just now, Gavin Newsom saying they're going to find another way to still ensure that $20 billion goes towards the continued process of the building of the bullet train to nowhere. Yet nothing has been done. Nothing has been built. That causes a deficit, and that forces the people to have to meet on that profit margin that the state is demanding out of the people's budget, their own personal budgets. That's why I love it when I hear things like, well, the state California is the 4th largest economy. Okay, let's just go in that direction. To whose benefit? To the states or to the prosperity of the people? It's not to the prosperity of the people. You're not benefiting from the state overinflated budget. It has nothing to do with that. This is why you don't run the state like a business, because running the state like a business forces all of us to meet on their accords that they sign behind closed doors attached to an ABSB bill that steers the market to go in a particular direction that the open and fair and free market has no business being forced to go down. If the people don't want it, we don't want it because it has its own organic feel. Government's job is to regulate. It's not there to steer it in a direction in favor of any one conglomerate, but that's exactly what they do because, well, everybody's under the mindset if we have to run the state like a business, not having to deal with a budget. Those are two different things. Running the state like a business and having to budget are completely different. And so the two sort of get mixed in together. And we also need to investigate, where did the money go? Who is holding the money? How did it get laundered? And it needs to be done expeditiously. But nobody wants to talk like this. So it's reducing spending while we perform the investigations to get us out of this deficit.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy who has a friend that lives in Dubai, and he says there is no way in the world that the state of California should have a homeless population. He goes, that's insane. He goes, and I guess the guy knows how much money is going into California, but it's not going out to the people.
No. In fact, and you can go on my website. I've talked about this too. I was a real estate student for a while. And one of the things that I did was when I was running for Congress was I did the math to figure out how many, according to the homeless census, that there were on the street. At that time, there was roughly 70 to 80,000 homeless here in the state of California, which we hold the majority of the homeless population here in California. And I said, okay, how many vacant homes are just in Los Angeles alone, whether they're vacant buildings or they're vacant, businesses or vacant houses? How many are in Los Angeles by themselves?
Hold on. All right. Dude, that was crazy. We just got knocked off.
That was weird.
Yeah.
We're having fun today.
Yeah. I think we were saying too much truth, but no.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Too much truth. So when I did the homework on the homeless and then how many vacant buildings there were, well, that exceeded the amount of homeless. So I thought, wait a second. So that's when I realized the state is purposely perpetuating the homeless because there's no standardized policy that we've actually implemented into the state constitution the way we have with low-income housing. Why don't we do that when it comes to the homeless? How do we handle the homeless? What types of homeless? What we can do with the homeless, and how we can ensure that they're not going to be, vagrants roaming all over the place that also negatively affect people's businesses, people's homes, where there's children and so on, right? So what are we missing here? Because I also discovered too that a lot of these real estate vacant homes, housings, buildings, and so on have been approached by other nonprofit organizations that have open books to the community. What do I mean by that? Their open books are available for anybody to scrutinize where they're putting their money that people donate to their organizations. That's good because then it shows you that they're being transparent. So you know that every penny that they're using is going onto the homeless and in various ways. So that way they're not lying. And you can actually see their results and their successes. So a lot of them had actually tried to reach out to owners and property owners and landowners to retrofit out their homes. The state would not let them retrofit out their homes to get the homeless off the street.
Wow.
Because it was a win-win not only for the homeowner or the building owner or the vacant building that could be retrofitted out to get the homeless off the street, but getting them off the street would have also would have helped out as to who was mentally unstable, who was just down on their lucks, who was a veteran, and so on, right? It was going to be able to break up these homeless so that they could be adhered to the right way to their needs and into why they ended up on the street. So they were going to pay for the rent, the upkeep of the facility, and get the homeless off the street. Who doesn't benefit from that? The government.
Everybody benefits.
Everybody benefits except for the government. Because when Los Angeles claimed another crisis, they are able to get more funding from the state through some sort of bond, right? So Gavin Newsom, I think a year ago, just gave Los Angeles a $5 billion bond to help out with the homeless, but no homeless got off the street. There's no fiscal oversight committee to ensure that, or some sort of state controller to ensure every line item and the money is being appropriated the right way. So what are we missing here? It's because if you can sustain or you can perpetuate a crisis, the counties or the cities can claim a crisis for more federal or state funding that they know there's no oversight to. So it's profiting off of the misery of the homeless. It's done on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So
yeah,
this is how you
absolutely.
know that what they're doing is just a flagrant lie. So let's move on to your CCW issues 2A. I always tell people that a CCW turns a right into a privilege. End of story. You
Yep, that's
cannot,
why I said issue. You notice that, right?
yeah, CCW issue. That turns a right into a privilege. I'm already covered under the California State Constitution under Article 1, Section 1, which is one of the most beautiful paragraphs in all of the state constitution.
Yes,
That says
yes.
I have a right to defend. So it's a right, not a privilege. So I can defend myself. So, and it's left ambiguous because, well, under Black's Law Dictionary, when it comes to keep and bear arm, the arm is defined as any sort of weapon that anyone can wield to defend one's life. That's Black's
Mhm.
Law Dictionary. Almost all of them, all the versions, Black's Law, 5th edition, 6th edition, 11th edition, they're almost all the same. So there's no real change in that. But firearm is under two different jurisdictions. Firearm is under Title United States Code 26. And what it does is it splits hairs under firearm and arm. So arm is why some of our left and the Democrats for years have been trying to close what they call the legal loophole of gun conventions. Why? It's because people can go there and buy from another private seller a gun because the gun is an arm for their own defense. So if I'm already protected under California State Constitution, I'm also protected under the Fourth Amendment to be secured in my privacy, and I'm also already protected under the Second Amendment, the
To
right to
protect
keep
the
and bear arms,
first.
right? So I have that right. If I go and I bring a gun with me and it's concealed and somebody attacks my family and I happen to whip out my gun, I'm now liable for taking that life because I didn't ask the government for permission to walk around with that gun. But I'm already given that authority by the state constitution and the Constitution of the United States.
Mhm.
So now you're asking me, but if I go and I ask permission from the government and they give me a CCW and I shoot and kill somebody out in public, but I was permitted with a CCW, well, then they're not going to ask any question. That's perfectly legal. So that's how you know it's turning a right into a privilege. Under my administration, once you go and you make a legal purchase and you already go through a 10-day period we have here in the state of California under the Department of Firearm Bureau that you have to go through that background check. As soon as you walk out with it, you are now legally, lawfully a CCW. In my personal opinion, we're going to turn California into a CCW state. I don't recommend open and carry because at this point in time, we still have a lot of, unfortunate groups that are out there targeting people. It's
Mhm.
better to keep the criminal and the criminal mindset guessing who's carrying and who's not.
Yeah.
Until we can get that under wraps, I would recommend let's just be a CCW state until we can get the hold of our, criminal infrastructure under wraps, and then we can slowly start to change that over. But that's already a right. You have the right, not a privilege. So under me, under my administration, there's not going to be CCW issuing. It's you already are. Of course, recommendations will be to train properly, to go through the safety courses and stuff, and maybe that can be applied to before you make your purchase that you regularly do that. But at the same time, it's your right. So I'm staunchly against CCWs.
Yeah, absolutely. The state of Idaho, man, you could buy a gun as a resident there and you could be out of the store in 15 minutes.
Yes. A lot of states are like that, and
Yeah.
and that's why I say, I think in California we have so much complicated laws that purposely confound everyone's understanding of what we can and cannot do. It's going to be a process, and I think we can do it, and I think we can do it quickly here in the state of California. I think we can get it all taken care of just within a matter of a couple months, at least under my administration. So count on that if you vote for me and your listeners are here hearing what I have to say.
Absolutely.
We talk about the Bible as a classroom curriculum. Absolutely. In fact, I actually took a world religion course in my school when I went to high school. It was one of the few high schools that permitted a world religion class. So you didn't just learn about Buddhism. You didn't just learn about people who are Hare Krishnas, and you didn't Catholicism, but you learned a little bit about the Quran. You learned a little bit about every religion that was out there. It was world religion, and it was a great class because it reflected not only my own personal beliefs, but the teacher did a very good job saying every religion that I introduced to you, I'm going to try to convince you that I'm that religion so that you have some sort of understanding of why they believe what they believe and how they came into their functions and their faiths and what they do and how they interact. with their outside communities.
And as far as you and I know, the Bible comes out on top. So
100%. So this is why I'm all for Bible as a classroom curriculum. 100%. In fact, it needs to be, in my opinion, needs to be its own curriculum as well. Again, because this is what our forefathers utilized to build the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. Again, if you read the Federalist Papers and you read the memoirs of our forefathers, you will absolutely see immediately that they took from the Bible. But a lot of people do not want that because, again, the Bible convicts.
Oh, restores a moral compass. That's why.
Yes. And then that's a difficult one for people to swallow. They don't want to feel like somebody is over them. Somebody's telling them what they have to do because they might end up in a place that they don't want to end up in, but they just don't want to address it. And what do we talk about? Well, unfortunately, at the end of the day, where do you go if you don't believe in Jesus? You go to hell. I mean, it's really that simple.
Hey, you know what, Daniel? That's what I love about you, bro. You say it how it is, bro.
And it's not to insult anybody, it's to say, but that's the core of it, right? You have to believe on Jesus. You have to believe that he rose from the dead. You have to believe he died for your sins, right? These are very simple, just stepping processes in order for you to make it in heaven. He doesn't expect you to be perfect, but he does expect you daily to try to turn away from your sins, your daily sins, the thoughts and the actions. He wants you to turn away from that. And he wants you to live a godly life. Even George Washington, I love his quote. I love, when I found in his memoirs, he said that if you adhere to the teachings of Jesus, you will have a better life. Now, whether he believed deeply, I don't know. I wasn't there at that time. But what I can tell you is nobody's going to say that unless they're actually adhering to that way of life. So he must have believed in Jesus, or at least in part. And for them to build off of, biblical principles to form what we have today, that's because they knew that freedom has always been God's plan, and slavery has always been, Satan's plan.
Yeah.
So, and then lastly, releasing water. This is for me an oxymoron. I mean, it's just one of the most ridiculous things when it comes to saying, California is in need of water. And I'm thinking to myself, but we have the whole ocean right next to us. I don't see why we don't engage in desalinations. We totally can. That'll open up jobs.
They do that in Israel.
They do. In fact, Israel has 3 desalination plants, and they are the largest importer and exporter of fresh water. California has the same capability. Again, new technologies and engineers and workers and providing water to our farmers, and the fact that California provides and feeds other third world nations. It just blows my mind that somehow we're always in this water crisis. The fact that we just can't sustain it, we don't know how to use it, we dump it out into the 20, 30 metric tons out into the ocean. It blows my mind. This is purposeful. You don't need to be a genius. This isn't conspiracy. This is purposeful. We have all these backlogs on our current water infrastructure. They don't adhere to it purposely.
Right.
It just blows my mind. And for me, that's not going to happen. We're going to adhere to the backlogs. We're going to engage in new technologies. We are going to ensure that we open up new channels, and the channels that are currently running right now are going to be maintained. And we're going to encourage people to collect and rainwater out in the rural areas, so they're not so dependent on some of the major metropolitan areas to have to pipe out all that water, but instead build their own infrastructures out there, water infrastructures and dam enclosures and everything that we can think of. Because when you look at the California State Constitution, it says that water is a natural resource and has to be used for the good of the state, because it's part of the natural occurring environment. But our government doesn't do that. They purposely claim that we're in a drought, and then they dump all of our fresh water. I mean, again, this is just showing you the ignorance and stupidity of the current government body we have in office today.
Do you know how much reduction that'll be in people's water bills?
Oh, and thank you. Yes. And here's the other thing too. Like, they raise the amount and how expensive it is for us to use water. And then when we have a massive rainstorm and all of our, our dams, everything is to the fullest. Would you think they'd lower the amount down now that water is plentiful? No, they continue to raise the rates because of the shareholders. That's just one reasoning why we see an increase in how much it costs to use water. But when water is plentiful, right? Water, the government can't create water. They can cultivate it, they can regulate it, they can move it around, but they cannot create it. Why? It's part of the natural occurring environment.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's more of it, you need to lower the price back down. Why are you raising it up anyway? It's not like you're providing more water. It's not like there's more bodies at work to try to somehow filter out what there's less of. It's such a scam.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you talk about this new technology for the water filtration systems, that's creating thousands of new jobs.
That's exactly. It's already at our fingertips. Most candidates already know this. Most candidates know there's already technologies that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, desalination and different types of salinations. You know, and then of course when we have our rivers and our dams, and we have some of these pipelines, and if they've been at this one underwater, I think it's the Delta water pipeline, this massive pipe underneath the ground. That thing has been in the works almost as long as the bullet train to nowhere, and yet nothing has been built. What is going on here? And this is where the frustration sets in with our farmers, with our rural areas. They know the simplicity behind all of this, but yet there's laws, and these go green laws are affecting the ability to move forward in this mannerism. It's because, again, government is steering the market to go in a way that they can benefit from, at least the government body, and because they're out for self-preservation, and the corporations are running everything.
Yeah, absolutely. 10,000%, Daniel. Yeah, I know you have some obligations to get to after this, so I don't want to keep you too long.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
I think my only thought is I want to let your audience know is be diligent about who you're researching to sit in this seat. When people say you need $1 million, do I really? I don't need your $1 million. I need your vote. I don't need you to sit there and spout out rhetoric. I need you to be a critical thinker. I don't need you to vote for somebody because that's somebody I'm going to have to endure too. I don't need you to vote for somebody because, well, they give you warm and fuzzies. I want you to vote for somebody who you know is going to ensure that there's accountability that is going to be set, and we're going to have new precedents as to what that accountability looks like. We're going to put somebody in who actually understands the Constitution and vested authorities, and that you are going to pay attention to major red flags when it comes to some of these other candidates. And you need yourself to become educated, because if you're not, you're the reasoning why we're here in the first place. If you think your vote is the only thing that matters, it is the end result of all of that work in researching. You need to participate, and you need to participate more than just a vote. You need to ensure that we are going to have an integrity-driven election. Otherwise, it's not going to matter what candidate you want, especially when you know, and I need you to admit to yourself, that the Republican Party has become a losing party and has not flipped the state in 70 plus years. What are you going to do differently this time? I am a candidate providing you an opportunity to do something different. You need to be a critical thinker at this time, participate, and ensure we're going to have a fair election, and that we're going to take back this state. But that requires your involvement, prayer, and to ensure, mostly importantly, that you are engaging in discourse with the opposition. You have to.
That's it. Amen. And do us the honor, brother, and pray us out.
Thank you, brother. Heavenly Father, we come before you right now and all the listeners, and we just ask you to always allow for your Holy Spirit to just live within us, breathe in us, and to go out there and to be strong with you as our side, and to speak truths that we know are hard and difficult to hear, but truths that will help to vindicate those who are feeling confounded, confused, and vindicate those who really want to seek the balance of your wisdom. And we just ask that you protect our state. You just push back against the evil that has plagued our nation and our state, and the people who would do all of us harm, or anybody else for that matter, that you would just suppress, stomp, and just prevent evil from peeking their heads out any further and causing any innocents more harm. Instead, Lord, we ask you that your light prevail, that your grace prevail, and that your strength, the power, and the glory prevail. In your name, Lord Jesus, amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And I just got to get one more minute with Daniel off the air, but I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Yes, for the first time on this broadcast, Pastor Gary McKibben. Yes, Gary McKibben from Belfast, Ireland. Wow, that's going to be a good one. Victory Church is coming to town, baby. God bless you.
Vindog Radio.